I'm Catherine Williams. I've been in the emissions inventory section since 2018 and in the point source section. So if you did if you did your 2017 inventory report, I may have been there. At that point, I was just helping people log in and get signed up for SLEIS. So that was the first year that we used SLEIS. So some of you may be familiar with Tempo. That's when we converted from Tempo to SLEIS. And then let me have Elizabeth Slade go ahead and introduce herself.
Yeah, I'm Elizabeth Slade. I'm also in the point source inventory with Catherine. I started in June of last year. I was working at a copper mine in Arizona for the last few years. So I kind of have experience with air compliance and emissions reporting from facility experience. And kind of a fun fact before that, in 2017, I actually was working as an intern with the Division of Air Quality, working to upload all the information from Tempo to SLEIS. So I have a really good background in working with SLEIS and the functionality. So yeah, I'm excited that you guys are all here and look forward to working with you guys.
So if you see, there's places where you can see the last person edited, and there's a lot of Elizabeth Slades in there from when she originally built these facilities. And then our other DEQ person is Ashley Sumner. So go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay. Hi, I am Ashley Sumner. I work for the Department of Environmental Quality doing communications, and I'm here today to help facilitate question, answer, and asking and kind of manage the meeting. So just I'll kind of let everybody know how that's going to go. We do ask that while Catherine is presenting and during the bulk of the meeting that you put any questions you may have in the chat, and then I will do my best to jump in and have Catherine answer those during the meeting so we can keep that flow. And then we'll have time at the very end to have you raise your hand using the little raise your hand function at the bottom of your screen. And then we can have you unmute yourself and actually ask your questions. So ask questions throughout, ask questions at the end, and we'll make sure to get those questions answered. I do ask that you keep yourselves muted during the meeting unless you are speaking. And that's it. Happy to be here. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you, Ashley. All right, so a few more logistics, more on the SLEIS end. We are recording this training and we will be posting it on our SLEIS training videos YouTube page, which you can see my screen here. Here's my cursor. You're gonna be following my cursor quite a bit today. This is our home page for SLEIS, and we have a bunch of resources here. And I know that we definitely put in every email, if you're confused, if you don't know where to start, go to our SLEIS training videos page. So let's open that real quick. This has basically all the sort of building blocks of SLEIS, everything from how to log in, how to build different components in SLEIS, how to actually report your emissions, how to shut things down, how to add an attachment, how to submit, how to request an amendment. So once we get the recording for today's training, we'll put it on here as well, and we will send an email once that's posted. Here is another thing. I would like everybody to try using the chat feature for this. So my question is, what is the date that our emissions inventories are due this year? And if you haven't found the chat feature, it's like the third icon from the right on the bottom of your screen. So if you think you know, oh, somebody raised their hand, but I don't want you to talk. I want you to use the chat feature. Oh, yay, lots of people saying April 15th. Thank you. Peter, Aaron, one. Thank you so much. Okay, that's awesome. So these reports are due April 15th. We're going to send 2 more reminder emails. We're going to send one on March 1st, and we'll send one on April 9th. And they'll be basically the same as the ones you've been getting so far. By the way, our mass email system is Constant Contact. If you have not been getting, I feel like you probably have been getting the emails if you're at this training, but if you're not getting those Constant Contact emails, get in touch with us, because since it's coming from Constant Contact is like it might not be recognized by your facility's email server. So anyway, get in touch with us if you're having trouble getting our emails. Other than that, we're going to try to minimize our correspondence to just like mandatory emails that we need to send you all, because I know you don't want to get your email inbox bombarded. And by the way, here's another thing: if you get your report submitted, you won't get any more emails from us, because we always pare down the contact list to only those people who still have outstanding reports. When we send our email reminder in March, we will send another training to another link to our training survey. So if you would like to have additional training on how to use SLEIS, go ahead and fill out that form. By the way, that's the only reason we're here today, is because we had some people respond. And what we're doing today, which is a start to finish example of how to submit a report in SLEIS, that got the most votes. So we listened to you. And there is a spot in the form for other. So if you have a better idea of how to present this information or something that would be more helpful, definitely put that in there and we will consider it. More logistics: we encourage everyone to work on your inventories as soon as possible. It's just Elizabeth and I that can help you with SLEIS. And this year we've have about 575 facilities reporting. And Elizabeth, how many reports do we still have out there? Do you know, or close to it?
We have 10 that are completed, so like 560.
So we still have 560 reports to get. So let's go ahead and get those reports going. Do you have questions? Please contact us. Email, phone, or calling us on the phone, whatever works best for you. Our ability to help everybody decreases as we get closer to April 15th, simply just because I think everybody's trying to get it done at the last minute. So plan ahead. Also, one more logistics thing: I'm going to be on spring break with my family that first week of April. I will check my voicemail and email, but I will not be doing help sessions that first week. So please plan around that. Okay, again, if you have any questions, put them in the chat, and Ashley will look at them. Now, let's go ahead and get started with our training. So, like I said, this is going to be a start to finish example of how you submit a report in SLEIS. This is going to be the basics. I will be adding any tips and tricks that I would use if I were in your shoes, based on now using SLEIS for 6 years. We will not be building release points, control devices, emission units, or unit processes. Again, if you need to know how to do that, start here with the SLEIS training videos and these 4 things: how to build a release point, control device, emission unit, unit process. That's where you can learn how to do that. Another thing people often ask questions about: how do I shut down an emission unit? We've got a video on that. So if you need to learn how to do those things, that's a great resource to start. If you go through the video and you still can't figure it out, then get in touch with us. Okay, let me see what else we're going to do. Okay, let's see. We're going to start with the basics. So we are going to log in. Let's see, how do we log in SLEIS? Up here in the top right corner, you can see the middle feature is login. So I'm going to go ahead and click that. Now, you are going to get 3 tries before SLEIS locks you out. We're going to do another interactive thing. I want you to put an emoji in the Google Meet if you have ever been locked out in SLEIS. So you can do a thumbs up or a thumbs down for however you feel it. Okay, Juan Martinez. It looks like he's been locked out before. Elizabeth Slade. You know what? I've been locked out too. And it was like 7 in the morning and there was nobody around to help me. So yeah, getting locked out, it happens, and it happens to everybody. You do not need to be embarrassed about it. If you get, looks like Grant Ensign, he's been locked out too. If you got locked out, just get in touch with us, call or email us, because we don't get an automated email that says so-and-so has been locked out. The only way we know is if you actually contact us. So the other thing is, if you say you're in here and you're trying to log in, and it's not letting you do it, and you're at try number 2, I would click this forgot password link, because then it will let you reset your password and you can get in. And especially if this is, you know, an off time, like you're working on this at 9 o'clock at night or on a Saturday, use that forgot password so that you can keep going. And because Elizabeth and I might not be around to help you. Okay, so I'm gonna log
Hey,
in.
Catherine,
Yes,
can we zoom in just a touch so it's a little bit
absolutely.
easier to see?
Is that better?
Do one more, and I think that'll be great.
How about
Perfect.
that? Okay,
Love it.
cool. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and log in. My browser saves my information, and that's like really, I know you're not supposed to do that, but I think a lot of us do that. You can give a thumbs up if you do that, thumbs down if you don't do that. So I'm gonna click this, but I will tell you that this is one of the places that people get, they get mixed up, okay? Sometimes their browser may have saved their password for something else and they're trying to log in and that's why they're getting locked out. So if you think your browser is putting something in here that isn't what it's supposed to be, you probably should clear your cache. I can't tell you exactly how to do that, but if you just Google whatever browser you're using, so I use Firefox. If I Googled Firefox clear cache, it will tell me step by step how to clear my browser, and it will get rid of all that saved information. So I'm gonna go ahead and log in. Hopefully it works. Oh, yay, I did it. I got logged in. By the way, this is my fake account. This is not my agency account. So these are all test facilities that I'm associated with in SLEIS, and I go in here and mess around with things. So once I'm logged in, I can now see what facilities I'm associated with. Some of you are only associated with one facility. Some of you, I think there's a few of you who have like 40 facilities. So you're going to see a variety of things in here, but you can go to the facility you want to work with. I'm going to work with this Catherine's test facility that has this identifier. By the way, this is, if we're ever asking for your 5-digit identifier, if we're trying to figure out what facility you're talking about, that's what we're talking about here. Yours are going to start with ones. Mine starts with a 9, so I don't get confused. Now, to get into that facility, I go to the Actions tab over here, and I click the button. Now, I'm in my Catherine's test facility. I can see that because now I have my facility identifiers over here in this gray column. The gray column has a lot of great information for you. It sort of is like high level, what are we doing? Where are we? Over here, we can see every report that's associated with my facility. So I know I need to work on the 2023 report, but I can also see the status of all my other reports. Here's a little helpful hint. So if I were a real person and I were actually submitting and I saw that I had 3 in process reports, I would want to do those first. Because if I do these and say I added like a bunch of emission units into the 2017 report, the next time we issue a report, you will see those. If you don't ever submit those reports, then we don't get any updated information from you, and the next report that's generated stays the same. So also Elizabeth is hunting people down that have reports that have reports that are either in process or not started. So check that out when you get in here. Okay, next thing, let's go ahead and get into our 2023 report. So again, we go over to our actions column here. I'm going to the 2023 report and I click this button. And now this is probably a pretty familiar site to most of you who have been in SLEIS before. There's lots of things to do at this level. Again, this gray column is really helpful. It tells you kind of high level what's going on. And anywhere you see one of these blue links, you can click this and it will, there's things you can download here, like this one right here. This tells you that I have submitted this report twice before, and I can see all of my submission history. So I can see everything, like, actually, I'll just click on it real quick. We'll experience this one. I can see I submitted on the 16th of February and the 20th of February. And if I download that, it's going to give me a PDF of what I submitted on that date. So you can see the changes that you've made. There's a lot of other things, like you can look at a high level total emissions, you can look at your process emissions. So feel free to mess around with that once you're in here. Now, back over to this side, because this is where we are entering information for your inventory report. The way that SLEIS is organized is these 5 squares on the top, these generally stay the same. And Elizabeth, actually, if you're a new facility, she's going to build your report for you, or she's going to build all of the components of your report. So we get if we get a new facility, or if we get a new facility out of our permitting software Tempo, she goes in and creates that facility. Say it had 3 boilers and 3 engines. She would create those emission units. And when that facility gets into SLEIS for the first time, those things are already there. So generally, when you get into SLEIS and you look at this report, you don't have to do anything up here. The things that I like to think about is you're looking for things that, making sure that the things that should be there still exist, that they're accurate, and if there's any missing items, you're going to add them. So let's just take this 1 square at a time. Oh, and by the way, bottom 2 squares we'll get to next. But this is where the information that you're going to enter for 2023 goes, in these 2 squares down here. So we're going to check over these top 5 squares and make sure they are accurate, the things that are there still exist, and there's nothing missing. So this facility square is basically just, again, high-level information. And if I wanted to change anything, I click edit over here. However, there's a lot of things at the facility level that I can't change. Like if I try to click on one of these things over here, I can't do anything. Once I go to the contacts tab, you'll see that there are things I can change. Any box that has one of these vertical red lines, you can actually change it. So say I wanted to, I'm going to add my middle name. And then I want to save that. And I cross my fingers and I get this beautiful blue banner that says the facility was successfully updated. SLEIS will give you that blue banner anytime you've done something right. If you do something wrong, like if I say, okay, I'm just going to delete this because that's not my phone number. It gives me a red banner instead, and it says, sorry, you must have at least 1 point of contact. So I know, okay, I have to leave my phone number in there. Generally, SLEIS is going to tell you what you did, and then usually it's going to give you a little yellow triangle with an exclamation point that shows you where you need to go, like which tab you need to access in order to make that change or make it correct, so you can save it. But if you have this red bar and you push the back button, you're going to lose the information that you've entered here. So try to fix it before you go off the page. Okay, I can save this though because I didn't actually delete my phone number. All right, so I'm black to blue, that's good. On the address tab, you'll see the location. I can't change anything about the location. And the reason why is because your location is associated with your permit. We get that question a lot. Like we moved our facility and I can't change that in SLEIS. At that point, you have to talk to a permitting engineer. So if you open up your permit, and see who did it, you can try calling them and say, hey, do I need a new permit modification? Because I actually moved my facility. Generally, they have to look and see, okay, where are you now and who is going to be impacted by your emissions? You can change your mailing address. So if your office is separate from your facility and it moved, you can go ahead and change that. Location is your lat and long. That you can't change. Again, that's something that's on your permit, and it only can change if your permit changes. And then additional information, this customer ID is just something that's in our permitting software that is associated with your facility. So it's a unique identifier. Okay, so I'm going to save one more time just for good measure, and I'm going out of here. I like to use this back button in SLEIS. It works every time. I think your back button on your browser works too, but I just choose this one. So I started with facility. Now I'm moving over to my release points. So I'm going to open the release point square. And now I can see all the release points that I have in SLEIS. Most of you probably have more release points. I'm just making this very simple for today. Couple things about the release point. Well, actually, let's just start with the next 4 squares are going to have 2 things in common. They're going to have this export function. This is where if you click this, it will download an Excel file that shows you all of these components. So it will show you the every release point's identifier, its description, its type, its stack parameters. So if you have, hundreds of release points, it might be easier for you to double check them by using that export function and looking at an Excel file rather than going through the GUI interface here. The add button, this is where we add a release point. And again, if you need to learn how to do that, go to our homepage and look at our YouTube, our SLEIS training videos YouTube page. Another thing, every release point and every emissions unit in SLEIS is going to get a unique identifier. So like when you add one of those, it comes up with this new number, and that number doesn't change. That's how SLEIS recognizes that specific component. And you'll see some start with 1s and some starts with 9s. Anything that's fugitive is going to start with a 9. Every other type of release point is going to start with a 1. And then eventually they will start with 2s. A couple things about the next part of SLEIS, everything after the facility square. You've got 2 ways to look at things under the actions here. So this is our just view pane. If I just want to look, but I don't want to edit, I can do this. So this is a very safe way to go into SLEIS and know that you're not going to mess anything up. If you want to edit, then you do the gear. So let's go ahead and open this up. And again, I'm just looking, does this all make sense? Is everything right for this release point? So let's see here. I'm going to say, okay, this is not a gooseneck. This is a vertical. So I'm going to change that back to a vertical. Down here, you'll see all these different stack parameters. If you want to change any of these stack parameters, I suggest that you zero them all out first. SLEIS gets kind of confused when you try to, like override one. So if I want to do that, then I would go back in and I would say, okay, this is actually 10 feet tall, and it is 1 foot in diameter, and it is 72 degrees when it comes out, and it is coming out at a flow rate of 12. It only lets you choose. It has a drop down here, but there's only one choice. So it's actual cubic feet per second. And then you'll see it will actually calculate the gas velocity for you. So again, if you want to change any of those, it's probably best to zero them all out first. Next is my location tab under release points. And most release points utilize the facility's coordinates. That just means if you think back to our facility square, it had a latitude and longitude there. And what this is saying is, can I just use that latitude and longitude for this release point? Generally, the answer is yes. If you would like to change that, you can go ahead and put in a separate lat long here. But I'm just going to leave that the same. Okay, I'm going to click save. Hopefully I'm going to get a blue banner. I did. So now I'm going to go back. Okay, let me make sure I covered everything I wanted to for that. Looks like I did. Okay, so then I need to go back out one more, and then I get back to my squares. This is like home base for your report. So the next one is going to be control devices and emission units, control devices, emission units, and unit processes. That format is going to look pretty similar to your release points. Here, is a big picture idea, is that anything that's on your permit, like again, let's go back to like the example facility that I was talking about earlier. Say you had 3 boilers and 3 engines. Each of those is an emission unit. So you would need to build 3 boiler emission units and 3 engine emission units. Actually, that's not true. There's lots of ways to do things in SLEIS. You could say, my emission unit is my boiler, if they're all the same, and you just have 1 emission unit for 3 boilers. We'll get to that. Regardless though, whatever is on your permit has to have an emission unit, and it has to have a release point. And so if you think about the release point, you've got your boiler, and then the stack that's coming out of it, that's your release point. Not everything is going to have a control device. And this is where you get to make some choices in SLEIS. So say your boiler says that it has an FGR, like a flue gas recirculator on it, and that's a listed control device on your permit. You still have the option of using the control device or not. You can use the control device, and it will help you to enter emissions when we get to the process emissions level. But you could also just hard enter your emissions once you get to the process emissions level. So this is like where we start seeing some choices in here. If I click on the control device, I do have one control device listed here. It is that flue gas recirculation that I was talking about. Let's go in and look at that and see what it looks like. It does make you choose a type. So like if I went in here, I start typing by number. So if I start typing just a 1, it's going to give me any of the types that that are listed in here. So you have to choose one of those. Again, I had 26, that flue gas recirculation. So I have to choose that. And then I have to also choose, if I want to use this control device, I have to choose what pollutants are controlled by it. I also have to choose what percentage of that pollutant it's going to control. So what I have said here is that this boiler, this flue gas recirculation is going to control 99.9, almost all of that acetaldehyde that I'm creating. So this information, EPA has some information out there about, like, in general, a bag house will control this much particulate matter. But I think probably a better resource for this information is like your manufacturer specifications. So, if you just got a boiler and you just installed this flue gas recirculation on it, that manufacturer is probably going to have the most up-to-date information about how much each pollutant is controlled. And this is hypothetical. I don't know that this actually, a flue gas recirculator would actually control acetaldehyde. This is, again, just a test facility. We're just messing around. So that's what a control device looks like. Again, it is optional. So let's go out of here. Now we'll go to emission units. So these are, again, the things that are actually creating the emissions at your facility. Looks like I've got 2 emission units in here. And let's see, if I open it up, this is something it's going to have me choose. Again, I have to choose like a type. And so that's something I can't change. I can change the description. This is where you shut things down. Again, there's a video for that. I mentioned earlier, so like for that hypothetical facility that I was talking about, if I have 3 boilers and they are all rated the same, like they're exactly the same, you could just say boilers. And then for this additional information, I could put, I've got 3 of them. And then you could report all of your emissions under that one emission unit. So lots of different ways to do things. This particular field doesn't show up many places, like it doesn't show up in any of our Excel reports that we get, but it is helpful. Like if you did decide to report this way, you can come in next year and be like, am I reporting all my boilers in this unit? And you look at the equipment count, you're like, oh yeah, I did. I put all 3 of them in here. So it's just kind of a nice place to save some information. The other thing is sometimes it will ask you to put a design capacity in, and you can choose from the drop down all those different things. Let's actually change this. Since this is a boiler, we're going to do it in BTUs. So we're going to say this is actually a 5 MMBTU boiler. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. And then I back out of here and we'll do one more square and then maybe we'll see if there's been any questions. This is the unit process spot. And if we think about the unit process, this is, I'm going to back out 1 second. The unit process is where we link the prior 3 squares together. So a unit process says, okay, we're taking this emission unit and we're linking it to this release point. And if there's a control device, I'm going to throw it in there too. And that is how SLEIS knows these 3 things work together. And the other thing is that a unit process could use the same emission unit multiple times. And so when we get in here, we see, okay, here's my emission unit ID, and this is process 1. But I could use that same emission unit, and it would be assigned process 2. Let's do an example of like why you might want to do that. Again, this is all optional. There's lots of different ways to do things in SLEIS, but say this particular boiler operates on both process gas, natural gas, and diesel. And you have, in 2023, you used all 3 of those types of fuels. You could do one process that reports all the diesel, one process that reports all of the natural gas, and one process that reports all of the processed gas. That's one way that people might like to do it, especially if there's built-in emission factors for each of those fuels. That could be a really easy way to do things. But you also could just report it as one process and have all the fuels and kind of hard enter the total tons that boiler produced. Let's go ahead and look at what a unit process looks like. So we have the process identifier. That's what SLEIS comes up with. And it's using this emission unit. And the next thing is the source classification code. Here's another little tip. These green question marks bring up a pop-up window that shows you, it tells you about these things. This is super duper small, but it's a source classification code. These are created by the EPA. There's thousands of them, and it helps us and it helps EPA to categorize your emissions. So I have given this particular unit process this source classification code. There's 4 levels to it. It means it's external combustion, it's an industrial boiler that runs on processed gas, and it's at a refinery. So that gives me a lot of information. Again, probably not that useful for you at your facility, but it helps us when we get all this information in. We download all of the data from the 2023 reports, and maybe we're working on a project and we need to know what are the emissions coming from all the boilers. We can use this source classification code to pull out, okay, there's a boiler source classification code, there's another one. That's what we use those for. Okay, the other things at the unit process level, you'll see a control approach. Right now, I have it linked to my control device that we built that we saw in the control device square. But say it is not controlled, then you can click this square right there. And that will tell SLEIS there's just an emission unit and a release point for this particular unit process. I'm going to unclick that because I want to save my control device. And then the last part is your release point. So there's the bag house that we saw in the release point square. And you have to put how much of the emissions are coming out of that release point. And in this case, we have 100%. Almost always it's going to be 100%. There are a few unit processes in SLEIS that have multiple release points. So you can add another release point right here. But that's pretty rare. Okay, I am going to save this. And we back out of here. And we're going to go back. So we have gone through everything here. We've looked to see, are the things that should be there still there? Are they accurate? And is anything missing? Ashley, have we had any questions come up that I need to address?
No questions in the chat.
Okay, awesome. I guess. Remember to put those questions in the chat if you have them. Okay, so let me catch up down here on my script. We are now moving on to the 2 squares that show us, or that are gonna, this is where we're gonna report everything that actually happened in 2023. So there's 2 squares, process emissions and attachments. This is really the one that's most important. I'm gonna click it. I now see my emission unit and I now see my identifier. And if I go ahead and open this up, then we see 3 tabs here. Okay, so really on this process tab, the only thing you really have to change is your annual throughput. Usually the most recent, thank you, Tiger. So the most recent throughput that we see, or that you've entered, is right here. And I will tell you that Elizabeth is looking, and if you submit a report that has exactly the same throughputs as the year before, she's going to think that's fishy. So like if I said, oh, I reported 1,000 million cubic feet of natural gas in 2022, and I'm reporting 1,000 million cubic feet of natural gas in 2023, that's going to be a red flag for us, because it's pretty, that would be pretty uncommon. And again, here's something that people get tripped up on. This is your unit of measurement. So in this particular case, we're talking about million cubic feet. That means you do not have to enter 6 zeros. So what this is saying, this is actually 1 billion million. This is 1 billion cubic feet that I'm entering. SLEIS is just saving you from entering the zeros. But I'm going to change it because this year I'm just going to say, okay, I just did literally 1 million cubic feet. Another thing that's new since our last triennial, so in 2020, when people reported, and maybe you don't know this, here's something else that you might want to know. There are about close to 200 facilities that report annually, and then the rest of everyone reports every 3 years. So that's when I say triennial, it means every 3 years. This is our triennial year. In our last triennial that was reporting for 2020, this little thing didn't exist here. And this is pretty sweet because if this particular unit did not report this year, you can just uncheck it. You will get a pop-up window. There's going to be a lot of pop-up windows in this particular square because if you change things here, it could impact how you calculate your emissions. And so they want to make sure that are you sure that's what you want to do? So for instance, this pop-up window, which is probably so small you can't even read it, it says, are you sure you want to permanently remove these pollutants? I'm going to say no, because I did not mean to do that, because I actually do have throughput this year. But if this, go ahead, Ashley.
Oh, just when it makes sense. We've had a few questions come through, so let me know when that.
Okay. All right, let me finish this one thought and then we'll answer some questions. So if I clicked OK, it would remove all of the pollutants that I've pre-populated at the emissions tab. And that's fine if you want to report 0. The other way to do it is to just report 0 on the emissions tab and keep this box checked. So I'm going to cancel there. Okay, Ashley, go ahead.
Okay, first question, what is a fugitive area?
Oh, my goodness, yes. That is a really good question. Let's go back. Okay, I'm leaving this page. I hope I have an answer for you because it is one of the types of release points, and you probably saw it right here, fugitive area. If I open that up, and can you guys can see my drop down? Okay, cool. So you can see all the different types that you can choose. You know what? I need to do some homework because I get very confused on the fugitive 2D, fugitive 3D, fugitive area. So Elizabeth, would you mind making us a note that we need to research those, and we'll put that out in our next email, the difference between those. The safest one to choose is fugitive area, but we will get back to you and give you more information on exactly what those 3 types mean. Okay, were there more questions, Ashley?
Yeah, a few more.
Okay.
Someone's reporting that they don't have those 3 tabs when you were on the process.
Here.
Let's see. Nope. It was when I jumped in. So the tabs, process operations, emissions, they don't have those tabs on their screen.
Okay. So that could be because this box has been unchecked. And so if you do that, that might make those tabs disappear. What's more common is for someone to open up their process emission square and not see anything. Like this is blank. And the reason that would be is if you had shut everything down at the unit process level. So if I go back here and I see unit process, my status is operating. If every unit process is either permanently shut down or temporarily shut down, when I come back to my process emissions square, it's going to be blank. And that can get complicated because I can't 100% remember. I think people do have trouble actually submitting their report when there's nothing here. So that's a great time to call us and help us walk you through that, because I can't exactly remember what the way we work through that. But if you're not seeing anything here, check your unit process square to see if it's because it's shut down. And if that's not the answer, if you really aren't seeing any of the tabs, I might need to do a little research and remember exactly why that is.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, next question. For the annual throughput, do you just get that information from the gas bill, for example, if it's a boiler?
That is a great specific question. So if you've ever had a help session with me, a lot of times I'll write you a homework email and I'll say, okay, for these emission units, you need to get this information. this really is like the crux of what you need to know in order to do this report. If this is the first time you're doing this, or, a lot of times what happens is it'll be somebody new in this position and they were not left a lot of breadcrumbs. Like nobody left them many details about how they were supposed to do this. And so at that point, a gas bill is a great place to start. Like if you've got 4 boilers, maybe you can estimate like each of these boilers used maybe 20% of the gas from the year. That's a great place to start, but I would not keep doing that for future years. A lot of people will put gas meters on their boilers, and so that might be something you're interested in installing. Another thing here is you've got different options. So I have million cubic feet chosen here, but you could also use million BTUs. So like if you go back to your boiler as the example, and you look at the data plate, it's going to tell you how many BTUs it's rated at, and it's usually BTUs per hour. So one way you could work through that is, okay, I ran it this many hours, which means I ran this many BTUs. So there's lots of different ways to do this. I think if it's your first time doing this report, you're going to learn a lot, and you're probably going to come up with ways that it will be easier to get this information the next time. So kind of keep track of those ideas as you go along. One other thing, if say you're trying to put your throughput in here and you don't like either of these throughput combinations, you can change this. The throughput combination comes from the source classification code. And so if you're like, actually, I do this on hours and you're not seeing an hour throughput combination, that's a good time to call Elizabeth or me, and we'll help you. We'll see if there's maybe another source classification code that you could use that would have hours for your throughput combination, and even better, has built-in emission factors associated with it. That's a long answer. Are there more questions?
Yes, there are. Do we need to get moving, or do we want to get to the questions?
Let's do maybe like 2 more questions. How's that sound?
Perfect. When you say, okay, who needs to file for annual versus triennial?
Oh, you don't need to worry about that. That's something that Elizabeth and I determined. It's more Elizabeth. I should give her all the credit. When a new modification or a new permit comes out of Tempo, the permitting software, there's a whole way that she evaluates what reporting requirements are associated with that facility. And so the annual people, it's usually you're in a non-attainment area. And especially the one that got a lot of people into the annual reporting cycle a few years ago was because of the ozone emission statement. If your facility is has a potential to emit more than 25 tons of NOx or VOCs, that threw a lot of people into the annual reporting requirement. Also, our large majors that they have very high PTEs, like 2,500 tons of some pollutants and 250 tons of others. They're doing it annually. Anybody can report annually. You just get in touch with us and we'll generate a report for you. The other requirement is if you have any pollutant is going to change by 40% or more, so increases by 40% or decreases by 40%, you are required to report. So like say in 2023, you report one thing, and then in 2024, your emissions for one or more pollutants is going to change by 40%, you're supposed to report in 2024 as well.
Okay.
You don't, for the most part, you don't have to worry about it. We'll tell you.
Okay. All right. We've got a few more questions. I'll ask one more and then we can save the rest for the end when you're done. So when you say permanently delete, is that just for the reporting year?
No. And you can't delete anything. You can permanently shut it down. And again, there's a video in our SLEIS, SLEIS training videos on how to shut things down. But when I'm at the unit process level, let's see here. See, there's 3 options. It can be operating, it can be permanently shut down, or it can be temporarily shut down. Generally, if something's never gonna operate again, like you removed it, then I would permanently shut it down. temporarily shut down is kind of weird. I feel like instead of putting temporarily shut down, I would rather use that check mark at the process emissions level, because if I temporarily shut it down here, then it is not going to show up at the process emissions level. It's not going to be in this list until I mark it as operating again. So I personally don't like using that temporarily shut down feature that much. Okay, I think we'll keep going. I don't have anywhere to be after this hour, so if people want to stay on and ask a lot of questions, that's fine with me. Okay, so let's go back to this emission unit and let me catch up with my little script here. Okay, we talked about the throughput combination. And again, if you don't like your throughput combination, that's a good time to get in touch with us. Down here, again, this really is the only thing you need for this page. If you can get that in there, you're doing really well. There's a bunch of things down here called our supplemental calculation parameters. Do not worry about these. If you get to the emissions tab and it gives you a red error bar when you try to save, it will tell you that it needs some of this information to make the calculation. Otherwise, I wouldn't worry about it. Okay, so the process tab is done. We're moving on to the operations tab. This tab tells us what your general operating schedule is. And so if I go in here, I can look and say, okay, sounds about right. We're going to change that. I actually meant, let's say I meant to say we go till 5:30 p.m. because that's a really short day. So I'll change that. These 5, I'm going to make this just a little bit smaller so you guys can see all 3 or all of these at the same time. So the average hours per day, days per week, weeks per year, days per year, hours per year, these kind of all auto calculate off each other. So if you're going to change one of these, I would erase everything and start over again. So I'm going to do, and I'll make this, let's see, I'll make it a little bit bigger now that you've seen that. Okay, so I'm going to tab through. The tab key is really helpful. It like gets you through here without SLEIS trying to calculate things on its own. So I'm tabbing through, I'm deleting everything. Okay, so now this is clear, and I'm going to say, actually, we're only operating about 12 hours a day, and we're only operating 5 days a week. We're still operating all 52 weeks of the year. And now SLEIS will auto update that for you and say, okay, you operated 260 days per year, and these were your actual hours. And then down here, this is where you put in the percent of each month that you operated. I didn't say that quite right. For like the entire year, you can say, okay, January we operated, that was, 8.5%. What I've done here, this is like basically even. So I'm saying I operated evenly out of the year, but certainly, for instance, like a lot of our sand and gravel pits, they may have 25% for June, July, August, and September, because that's when they're operating the most. That's when there's the most road construction. And then there would be zeros for everything else. So go ahead and mess around with that and make that as accurate as possible. And then finally, it's like the moment we've all been waiting for. We get to the emissions tab. And just so you know, we have an update this year, and it wasn't exactly supposed to be rolled out just yet. It's kind of like a happy accident. Some of you are going to get to this to this tab, and you're going to see all the pollutants that you need to report listed here. And they're going to have calculation method 8_2, which is associated with your source classification code. And basically, it's going to calculate everything based on that throughput you entered at the process tab. And you just look through it and say, okay, that's right. Some of you, though, are still going to be at this point where you have to enter all of the pollutants by hand, which is how it's always been. We're trying to get to the point where SLEIS will tell you what pollutants you need to enter. So let's start here. I had NOx in here, so I must be supposed to report NOx. If we look at this, this is the emission factor that I have associated with my NOx. That will stay the same from year to year unless you change it. And you can change it. If you open up that pollutant, you can put in a new emission factor. You can also mess around with the different calculation methods. So for instance, if you know, like you just have the total tons. You don't have emission factors. A good example of that is like maybe you have a continuous emissions monitoring system. Probably not. Most people don't have those. But see how now the emission factors, it's grayed out, meaning I can't enter an emission factor here. So I'm just going to say, okay, I created 10 tons of NOx this year because my continuous emissions monitoring system told me so. That's fine. And you can save that. We're going to get a blue bar, cross your fingers. Yep. And that's good. Another thing that you could do is maybe you had a stat test this year. I can choose stat test and it gave me an emission factor. So it said for every million cubic feet that your boiler is running, you are creating 0.01 pounds of NOx. And so if I click, oh, and I can also put my stat test date in here. And I click save. And it should let me save, which is kind of funny because I used a date that's actually hasn't happened yet, but still. So anyway, the different calculation methods they're really helpful. Now, say you're totally new to this and you have no idea what other pollutants you're supposed to add. We have a resource. We're going to go way out of here real quick. Let me say, oh wait, it was saved. Okay. So let me go back to our home page. Again, these are all of our resources that we have listed for you. But this one we made last, I guess it probably was for the last triennial. We basically listed, I'm going to split my screen so you guys can see both of these things. We made a little cheat sheet that says, okay, if you have a boiler, you are probably going to report these types of pollutants. Now, this is going to be really big, but that's okay. I'm going back to my process emissions. I'm going to edit it. I'm going to my emissions tab. And let me make this bigger so people can see it. Okay, so we're going to look at this part right here. This is saying if you have a boiler, you likely are creating these pollutants. Now, if I am lucky, then I have this SCC code associated with my unit process. And hopefully, if I use emission, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so it's not so crazy looking. There we go. Hopefully, it's going to have these pollutant associated with it. And I can use calculation method 8_2. So here we go. I'm going to type in PM10. And just those of you who've done this for a long time, you know that there's 5 different particulate matters that you can choose, that a lot of things report. If it's a combustion emission unit, like a boiler, you're going to need to report all 5 of those. I'm going to select 8_2 and I get a pop-up. And this pop-up is telling me what the emission factor is. If I place my cursor over the different fields, it's going to tell me like where this emission factor originated. This one in particular says AP42. That is EPA's, like, basically it's a bunch of chapters that talk about all different types of emission units and what kind of pollutants they generate. So this is a pretty good emission factor. Here it is right there, and it's saying it is 7.6. We'll see what the unit of measurement is. So it's 7.6 pounds per million cubic feet, and it has now put in that I am creating 3.8 tons of that. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to add my PM10. Oh, well, hold on. Let's not do that one yet. PM10 filterable. I'm going to choose 8_2. I'm going to select that circle. I'm adding it. And now I'm going to add it again. I'm now going to do PM25 primary. I am choosing 8_2, selecting that circle, adding PM25 filterable, and it gets a little redundant, but we just get through it. I am now adding PM condensable. I am selecting 8_2. I am clicking that circle. And I've got a couple more. I'm going to do SO2, Some of you may have entered SOx in the past, but that pollutant has been retired. So please use SO2 from now on. I am selecting that and it's got my tonnage. I am putting in VOCs and selecting 8_2. And let's see, I did my NOx with my SEMS data. I am now adding carbon monoxide. I am selecting 8_2 and the circle. Okay, now I'm going to try ammonia, which is NH3. I click ammonia and I click 8_2. Oh, and I get a different pop-up. It says there were no matches on this current emissions for the factor formula. I'm going to click OK. This is just a guess that boilers may create these. Perhaps I'm using process gas for this. So maybe if I was doing a diesel boiler, it would have ammonia. If I get that pop-up window, I'm going to go ahead and delete that particular pollutant. I'm not going to worry about it. Now I'm going to try lead since it's in there. And then I select 8_2. Again, no matches. So I click OK. I delete that. I'm going to click save. See, we cross our fingers and it was successful. Let me make this bigger again so everybody can see it. So this is what it looks like. Here, once you've got your emissions in, you've got your tons over here in this column. You can look to see if that looks right. And that was pretty easy because I had those built-in emission factors. So that is a great place to get in touch with Elizabeth or me. If you're like, I don't have any emission factors for this unit, I don't even know where to start, perhaps we can help you find a source classification code that is still pretty accurate and has built-in emission factors associated with it. Okay, I'm going to show, let me catch up with my script over here. I'm going to show you one more thing and then we'll do some questions because I know our hour's running short. If we go back to my control devices and we look at it, I see that I do have acetaldehyde is controlled. So how do I add that information into my process emissions? I go here and I go back to my emissions tab and I can add acetaldehyde. I have to spell it right. Nope. Acetal. There it is. Okay. And this time, instead of 8_2, I'm going to choose 8_1. That is a post-control emission factor. I select it and SLEIS gets it in there. And it knows that I have a control device on here that is controlling 99.9% of this pollutant. Okay, for sake of time, we're going to scurry along here. So I've got my process emissions, or sorry, I've got my unit process, all the emissions are recorded. And then the last thing is that a lot of you probably want to know about is how do I actually submit this? I click validate. This is a great thing. It says no errors were encountered while validating your submission. If there were errors, it's going to give you an Excel file to download. It looks scary, but it's only 2 columns. You just look at each column and it says, this is the error and this is the emission unit that I'm seeing it on. And if you can't get through it, give us a call. Now, it's saying, mark this is ready for submission. I did that. It's this tiny little checkbox over here. Some people miss that. Now I go back. And the next thing I see is initiate submission. So I'm going to initiate it. The first thing I have to do is click view electronic document. It's going to download. Just going to save it on my desktop. And now I can click continue. Now I have to certify that I am who I am. I'm the owner of the account. I have the authority to do this. I have reviewed the electronic report. And again, this is going to, that document's going to be saved in this folder, or sorry, in this report. So it's always there for you to see. I have to answer my security questions. Give me an emoji if you've ever had trouble with your security questions. Okay, and then I have my password saved. I know that's not a great thing to do. I don't know why the continue is grayed out, but I'm clicking it and I'm done. when I get to this screen right here and it says view your official copy, you can download this and you can save it. But you can say, this is my number and I know I submitted it then. And we get an email knowing that it was just submitted. That was a lot of information. We're right at 11 o'clock. Ashley, do we want to, I don't know what we want to do. Do we want to see if anyone has questions?
Yeah, I think let's just cover the questions that we have in the chat, and then your contact information is pinned as well as Elizabeth's in the chat. So maybe people can follow up with you.
Okay.
With those extra, any other questions that they may have. Okay, first question, how do you add new authorized facility users?
Okay, that's a great question. Let's see, how do I get out of here? So, okay, I think this is at the facility level. You can see view facility users here. And if I'm an administrator, I've never done it from the facility side, but I should be able to add. I think maybe actually I can only change. The best way to do it is to fill out our form. So that is on our home page. It's right here. And this brings up a Google form. And you basically submit this and Elizabeth will create an account for you. The thing that's most helpful is if you have that 5-digit facility ID to put in here. And if you have multiple ones, just list them all and we'll get them in there.
Okay, next question. Can you remove equipment that is no longer on our mine site? Is there a video to show how to remove them, or do we just leave them as permanently shut down?
You can't totally remove them. Permanently shut down is the same as deleting. It's basically, there is no way for you to delete them. And yes, there is a video on our training website. It's right here, shutting down an emission unit. If you follow that, it shows you how to do it.
Awesome. Okay. If the facility did not operate in 2023, would you uncheck the box for each process? Should you also add a note for each?
I love notes. They're so helpful. Anytime we get a note, it's just really helpful. Let me go into this one because this one's now submitted. So let's see. I'm now in a 2024 report, so this doesn't really even exist. But yes, the best way, I forget what you said, if facility did not operate, I think, let me see. No, I thought there was going to be a new thing where you could say the whole facility didn't operate, but I think the best way to do it is to just do it at, and I'll change it here. I unclick this and I click OK and see how everything gets grayed out. So now I can't actually operate, or I can't enter anything there. And oops, stay on page. I have to save it. Don't forget to save. And now let's go back out. So you will not see anything there. And then I could also just do the same thing for this one. Click OK. It gets grayed out. And then a great place to leave a note for why you did this is if I back out here, you should be able to leave a comment at the facility level. And that would be a great place to say, we did not operate in 2024. Something like that.
Okay, that is all the questions we have in the chat. So yeah, I think we're good.
Okay, so I guess this is recorded. We'll get it up as soon as possible and send you an email that says we did that and a link to where you can find it. And we'll get another reminder email out March 1st with another training survey link. So if you want more training, let us know. We're happy to do it. I think that's it. Thanks, everybody. And please, if there's anything you've learned from this, we're somewhat approachable. So approach us if you have questions. Elizabeth, do you have anything to add?
Nope, that was great. And yeah, just give us a call or email us if you have any questions. We'd love to help, especially earlier rather than April 14th.
That sounds good. Okay, and thank you, Ashley, for moderating today.